Guys, it's Miss Gifford. Today I'm going to show you how to sew a 2-hole button, a 4-hole button, and a shank button. Okay, follow along to see how we do it.
So with all of these, I used a piece of cotton, and then I used a needle and thread that are also compatible with cotton. And this can be used for all different things, whether it be your sweater, a pair of pants, or anything that you need to hold two pieces of fabric together. This is super important to learn because we all wear clothes that have buttons on them and we can easily mend them without having to take them to the seamstress. To sew a button, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a piece of fabric, a straight edge, something to mark where you want your button. I'm using a wax pen, a button itself, a needle, and thread. The first thing we want to do is take our needle and thread it. So as a rule of thumb, we do about an arm's distance of thread. And after that, we're going to first cut off some of this excess. The yarn seems to be thinned. So we cut that off so we have a clean edge, and then we just thread the needle. So after you trim off the excess and you thread your needle, all you have to do is tie a double knot around the end. That's one, and I like to do two just to be safe. So that's two, and then you can trim off the excess. And then you put your scissors and this excess thread to the side. To begin, we have our fabric. It is this way, but I'm going to do it this way for the sake of the video so we can see better. I'm using this black 2-hole button, and I'm using green thread because it will be easier for you guys to see, but usually it's better to use a thread that matches the fabric or the button so it is not visible. So what we do, I want to put my button right here, so I'm going to take my straight edge and just do a little line that would line up with where these buttons are. So this line is where I want my button to go. So the first thing we're going to do is take the fabric in our non-dominant hand and the needle in our dominant hand, and we're just going to insert on that front side. And then without going all the way through, we're just going to go through the fabric and pull the thread all the way tight, just like that. So we have our knot at the end right there. And then we are going to start our button. So this is where we're starting, and we're just going to put the needle through, pull it tight, and then you can hold onto the button to make sure it's going the way that you want it. And we're just gonna go right back through onto that line. Just like that. So once we have our button in, we're gonna go back to the other side and go right through that first stitch. And it should take us right into the button. Pull it tight, just like that, and then we're gonna repeat the process. Right back through. You could do this as many times as you feel that you need. You just want to keep going through those same stitches. Just like that. If you wanted to, this would be a good opportunity to use a thimble to protect your fingers from going in. So once we feel that our button is stable, we're going to start to finish it off. So I'm at this side, I'm just going to go through the back side. I'm going to put the needle right through that stitch, and we're going to pull it tight. You want to use equal pressure on everything you do so you don't pull the fabric. And then once you do that, you can hold it down, and we're just going to wrap the thread around what we made about 3 times. Okay, and once we do that, we are going to again hold the needle in our dominant hand and this situation in our non-dominant hand, and we're going to go in and make a finishing stitch. So you can do that, make a loop, and then once you have that loop, you're going to go through it and pull it tight. And you could do that a few times. And then once you have that loop, you're going to put the needle through and pull it tight. And then you should have your button firmly stitched on. And then once we do that, we are going to again hold the needle in our dominant hand and this situation in our non-dominant hand, and we're going to go in and make a finishing stitch. So you can do that, make a loop, and then once you have that loop, you're going to go through it and pull it tight. And you could do that a few times. And then once you have that loop, you're going to put the needle through and pull it tight. And then you should have your button firmly stitched on. So now we're going to transition over a 4-hole button. And again, I'm going to use a piece of cotton. I have already threaded my needle, and this thread is compatible with cotton as well. So when we're done with that, we can trim off the excess with our scissors. And again, we are going to line up where we want our button to go. I want it to go right here. And we are going to start off with our thread in our dominant hand and our fabric in the other, and we're going to stick the needle through about halfway, and then we're going to swing back out on the other side without going all the way through, pulling all the way tight, and then with that little excess, we're just going to trim it. Again, we're going to take our button. The button goes this way or that way, depending on how it looks with the other ones. And the first thing is you're just going to stick the needle through the hole. And since it's a 4 button, we are going to then go diagonally. So I'm going to go right over to this button, hold, push it through, pull it tight, and then we are going to put our needle into the other side. So this part's a little tricky, but you just want to get the needle through the hole, and then you go back over top into the opposite hole. So then we have all 4 holes threaded with our green stitch. We're just going to repeat this process a few times until we feel that our button is secure. So we can go through those same stitches to get our button super secure. And again, we're going diagonally and through, and then over into this one, and then you go over top to the bottom, and then you'll just repeat that a few times until your button is secure. The 4-hole button is very similar to the 2-hole, where when we are done, we're going to finish by gathering our fabric, and then we're going to go through the back and make a small stitch. So we make our small stitch that pulls out, and then we place it down, and we wrap the yarn around 3 times. And then once we get there, we can do the same process of completing the stitch. So we're just going to go in and out like so, push it through. And then once we have that loop, we can tie a knot. And you want to do this about 2 times to make sure that your button is not going anywhere. So you have that loop, pull it through, pull it tight, and then you can trim off the excess. Put your scissors down, put your needle down, and then you have a 4-hole button. Lastly, we're going to complete the shank button. So this button does not have any visible holes at the front like our 2 and our 4-hole do. However, the hole that secures it is on the back. And we're going to thread our needle and pull it all the way through. We're going to double up our thread, and once we get to the end, we are going to knot it twice. Like that, and then we take our scissors and trim off that excess. Once we have our needle threaded and knotted off, we are going to take our piece of fabric, our straight edge again, and our washable pen so we can know exactly where we want to put our button. Again, we start with our needle in our dominant hand, and we're going to do the same thing that we have been doing. Put the needle halfway through, and then put it out through that front side again, pulling it tight to our knot. And then we have a bunch of extra, and we're just going to trim that off. Once we have that, we are going to hold the needle in our non-dominant hand and then just put the shank button all the way through, all the way down, and then we are going to do that same step again. Put the needle through, pull it tight. Here we have our button like so. After this, we are going to take our needle and put it right back through the eye of the shank button until it comes out the other side. And then we are just going to repeat the process. We're going to make a stitch in the fabric. So you go through that side. You can switch hands, pull it tight, and go back through the eye of the button. We have our stitch through. We're not going in and out, in and out. We're just putting the needle through the front side twice, pulling it through, and then swinging back around through the eye of the button, pulling it tight. And then once we do that a few times, we are going to go through the side stitch where we went through a bunch of times. And then you're just going to put your needle through. So we're not making a new hole in the fabric, we're just going through where all of the thread is. And then the same concept, we are going to pull it until we have our little loop, and then we can knot it off twice.
So there's once. We put it through all of that gathered stitches and
knot it off twice, and then your button should be super secure. So after that, we can trim off all that excess. And then we have our shank button.